Hi everyone, join me today as I sketch this country scene from the Netherlands in line and wash watercolour. Supplies for today: I've got a pencil, eraser, small sized 1 brush and a size 8 round, Lamy fountain pen, palette of paints, palette for mixing, and water. This is my Daniel Smith travel set. It has got my 15 favourite colours inside and a swatch card in the lid. I am going to use my Stillman & Byrne Beta Series sketchbook. It is a mixed media sketchbook, so it is a good quality paper, but can't take multiple watercolour layers like a cotton watercolour paper might do. I am going to go straight into the ink work, and for that I'm going to use my Lamy LX fountain pen containing a waterproof black ink. The pencil sketch is already down on the page, and if you would like to make use of the free downloadable and traceable PDF that I have provided, have a look in the information box below, and the web link to find the PDF is provided there. If you would prefer to sketch it yourself rather than trace it, then follow along in pencil with what I am doing in pen, and once you've got your pencil sketch down, then you can go over in your permanent marker pen. Always make sure, if you're going to be doing an additional layer in watercolor, that the ink in the pen that you are using is either waterproof or archival ink. If you use anything but that, then the watercolor will cause the ink to run once you put the paint on top. I am going to work quite quickly with my fountain pen in an effort to try and get the lines to be a little bit wobbly, which I think gives them a little bit more character. I know that I can have a tendency to have the lines be a little bit too tight and a little bit too straight, and then I think it starts to look a little bit more like an architectural rendering than a sketch. So working quickly just helps to keep that spontaneity in the sketch that we're trying to create. It also helps if you don't make all of your lines continuous and that you leave a little gap here and there, as you can see in some of the lines that I'm doing. That also gives the sketch a bit more character. So I'm just getting the basic ink work down now, and I might come in at a later stage and put in more grass or more details, but this is sufficient for now. Onto the paintwork now, and I'm going to prepare the sky by putting down some water only in the sky area. Then I'm going to mix up a mixture of cobalt blue and indigo. Once I've got that on my brush, I'm going to drop it into the wet sky area to try and get this irregular cloud pattern that I can see. Once my blue color is down, I'm going to use tissue paper to blot here and there to give the effect of clouds. There's quite a lot of greens and browns in the sketch, so I'm going to try and mix them up as much as I can. In the back, I'm going to start with a weak solution of undersea green. I'll come and add to that later. Then on the sandy side, I'm going to make a weak mix of sepia and put that down. Then for the grass on the right, I'm going to put together some sap green into the undersea green and lay that in on the right. And then I'll put more of that same green into the central band of green as well. Whilst the green that I've laid down is still a little bit wet, I'm going to make up a thicker consistency mix of the undersea green, and now I'm going to dot that around the green area to try and get a little bit more of a different color as well as some contrast in the green areas. I'm going to create some contrast in the brown area using transparent brown oxide. And now for the trees in the background, I'm going to dot in a thicker consistency mix of perylene green and put that in the background. Perylene green is slightly more blue than the greens I've been using, which is good then for trees that are further in the distance. For the fence posts now, I'm going to put together some sepia and neutral tint in a weak consistency. I make sure that the painting is dry enough that it's not going to bleed into the green. As soon as I'm sure of that, I will put the color down into the fence posts. I'm not trying to do any shadows or anything at this stage, just getting the base color onto the fence. Then I will dot in a bit of sap green onto the trees and then just add whatever brown is on my palette for this branch that's sticking out on the right. Now for the signboard as well as the clog that's on the fence, I'm just going to mix some new gamboge and the brown color that's already on the palette and just work between those two to get the colors down for these two. I don't want anything to be too bright, so that is why I'm muting the colors with the brown. I want to get a bit more contrast and depth in this grassy area in the center now, and to do that I'm going to mix up some thicker consistency of undersea green. I'm going to be conscious of not covering the whole area with this darker color that I've mixed, to try and let some of the lighter color shine through from underneath, but just add and dot around the darker contrast color in the middle and especially along the edges. The yellow on the clog is now dry, so I'm just going to put a bit of brown on the inside and then a very weak mix of the perylene red on the outside. In this next layer, I want to work towards getting a little bit more contrast and depth to the sketch. In order to do that, I'm going to work with the same colors that I did in my first layer, but increase the consistency somewhat. Then I'm going to work through each section and just, particularly along the edges, increase the contrast. But I'm going to make sure at all times that I don't cover the entire layer again in the next color, but to allow the lighter color from the lower layers to still show through. That way we can get a nice amount of contrast in the sketch. Covering the whole sketch again would just land me in the same situation that I am now, and that is with not enough contrast, not enough lights and darks. So do make sure to leave some of the lighter sections to show through. My friend Lillian, who sent me this photograph, says that this type of path is called a klompenpad. Klomp means clog in Dutch, the clog shoes that used to be so common. Pad means path. So basically, this is a walking path. Lillian says that these trails are sometimes really small pathways through the countryside, and they cross farmlands and private properties. This trail is in the countryside close to a small town called Garderen. It is in the De Veluwe National Park in the Gelderland province of the Netherlands. Now I'm going to work on the shadow side of the fence posts using some neutral tint. There isn't this degree of shadow in the photograph if you have a look, but I'm going to add it in order to create a greater amount of contrast on the fence posts. I now feel that the front panels of the fence could have a little bit more contrast, so I'm just going to work with the browns and greys that I've got on my palette and just do another wash on the front panels. And then I'm just going to add in the shadow on the right hand side of this post that I missed. Now I'm going to continue working through the sketch, just having a look and deciding what areas need a little bit extra. I'm adding some extra brown to the trees on the side and then also increasing the depth of color in the clog. And then I think that the board on the fence post needs a little bit of shadow, so I'm going to put that in there. I will give the whole thing a chance to dry completely before I come in for the final bits and pieces. I'll start with my fountain pen and do the writing on the signboard. I'll do the heading at the top of the board and then just use squiggly lines to represent the rest of the writing that's on the board. I will use my pen to add some shadow on the side and underneath the signboard, as well as a small cast shadow of the clog on the fence post. I'm going to add a pop of perylene red on the sign where it indicates no dogs allowed. I'm going to strengthen the cast shadow of the clog on the fence and then just add a bit of a shadow under the heel. And then using quite a thick consistency of the perylene red and a very thin brush, I will add the text on the sign saying unicorn pad, which obviously means unicorn path. Lillian can't really give an explanation as to why it's called that, but she says she thinks it's a whimsical reason for whoever put the sign up on the fence. As the text dries, it's getting a little bit lighter, so I'm going to do a second pass of the writing. I think the sketch is really close to being done, but I'm just going to dry it with the hairdryer first. And once that's done, I'm going to add some grasses in the foreground. I'm going to just make a thick consistency of any green color that I've got on my palette. And I'm going to use a very thin brush and do quick strokes to make the bunches of grass in the foreground. I will clump the grass in bunches and just vary where I'm placing the bunches, either a little bit more forward or slightly further back, so that they're not all in a straight line. Just a few tips now with regards to removing the masking tape. A lot of times people complain that the tape does tear their painting, and there are often a variety of things that could do this, but let's try and reduce the risk as far as possible. So make sure that the painting is completely dry before you consider removing the masking tape. Secondly, as you can see as I'm doing here, I'm removing it really slowly, and also I'm not pulling the tape upwards at 90 degrees to the paper, because that also can cause the paper to tear. If you look at the way in which I'm removing it, I'm almost folding the masking tape back on itself and pulling it off at 180 degrees to the page rather than upwards. I find that this slow pull against itself reduces the risk of tearing the paper as much as possible. Slow and steady on the driest paper possible is definitely your best bet. And there's the final sketch. If you enjoyed this video, I'd really appreciate a like, comment and subscribe. It really helps to build my small channel. Until next time, bye for now.